And our program guest this morning is one of those impacted by the change of numbers in the Parliament, the independent from Tasmania, Andrew Wilkie, and he's fighting, of course, for poker machine reform. But before that, we'll take a look at what the Sunday papers are reporting. And Dennis, overnight, the New Zealand election and the ruling National Party and Prime Minister John Key, an easy win.
Yes, it's a result that was pretty much expected. When I read it in the paper this morning, I thought I was reading an Australian news poll, because the Conservatives are on 48% of the vote, the Labor on 27% and the Greens on 11%. So I thought, well, where have I read that before? But that outcome means that John Key and the Nationals will fall just short of governing in their own right, which is quite a feat in a multi-party preferential system. Labor, their vote slumped and they've lost a quarter of their seats. The Greens got a big kick up and they've got 4 extra members.
All right, well, let's hear now from the two leaders.
We're a bit bloodied, but we're not defeated. And we're not defeated because the things that we believe in are things worth fighting for. A fairer New Zealand. It might not have been our time this time, but our time will come again and we will be ready to take New Zealand forward at that time.
What an awesome night. And what a fabulous night to be supporting the New Zealand National Party. And can I tell you, it's a fabulous night to be the leader of the National Party. Ladies and gentlemen, I always said it would be tight, and I was right. But what I can tell you is that for another 3 years, there will be a national-led government in New Zealand.
And Nikki, back home, Kevin Rudd is pushing hard for internal party reform, and he's certainly saying that it's urgent. In fact, the very survival of the Labor Party as a major party seems to be at stake, as he sees it.
That's what it sounds like, and I guess the only way it can be rescued is if Kevin is re-elected, and I gather that on Sky this morning he pretty much said that. So
well, we'll go to that then, Nikki, and then we'll come back to what the papers are saying. Here's Kevin Rudd on Sky this morning.
You see, I go back to my thesis. What have we got to fear from the membership? They come from right across the nation, geographically, and all parts of the world. So my recommendation, if elected, if I was in a position in the future...
You mean if elected Prime Minister again?
No. I'm going to your question that you said if you're ever in a position to do something about this. Is that you don't make speeches like this for the fun of it. You know me, Paul, you've known me for 20 years. I rarely do.
There you go.
Well,
didn't quite sound like a slip of the tongue, did it?
No, it didn't. So, OK, let's go to what he's first of all, what he's recommending.
Well, he's saying that the party has to be honest, truthful, straightforward, warts and all. The public is tired of spin. People want us to explain in straightforward terms why we are doing things and why we are not doing things. Now, I think the problem here is not the message, but the messenger. All the things that Kevin did wrong when he was Prime Minister, he's now suggesting should be corrected. Now, maybe that shows a change of heart on his part, but I think there'll be a lot of people in the Labor Party who will be saying, oh, well, it's all very well to lecture us now about what should be done, but why didn't you do it when you were there? Yeah,
as one Labor member put it, Dennis, that in his time he was short on communication and long on spin.
Yes, and he almost abolished caucus when he was Prime Minister. I mean, it had...
Much easier that way.
It used to meet every week, but it never said anything or did anything. And prior to the one conference the Labor Party had while he was Prime Minister, he had all the union leaders and the faction leaders around the Kirribilli House, sat them down and said to them, you can do what you like, you can say what you like, we're not going to take any notice of anything that happens at this conference. And then the conference was covered in chloroform by the Prime Minister's office and nobody noticed it was on.
So the cheering for the rank and file now is just a little disingenuous.
And then even the move, and he initiated this, of course, was that the Prime Minister alone chose the ministry, when once that used to be chosen by the entire caucus. That's not really a move towards democracy when you're giving all power to one person.
No, reducing the franchise from 112 to 1 is sort of, I think, the other way.
Well, can we just give him a little benefit of the doubt and say that his time in purgatory might have made him see the light?
Yeah, that's possible. But what he is saying, though, and the threat that he articulates is that the Greens will take over from Labor as the third force if they don't get their act together and embrace some sort of reform.
There's a real fear in the Labor Party, though, that could happen if they don't get their act together.
Leading from the left.
But the biggest threat to Labor is the Coalition taking their primary vote, and the Coalition sitting on a primary vote of 46 to 48%.
From both ends, they're being wedged.
Oh, yeah.
Now, just on those couple of big issues that will come up at the National Conference, Karen, uranium sales to India and on gay marriage, do you think it's already cooked up that Julia Gillard will have a victory on both fronts?
I think she'll certainly, yes, she'll have a victory on both fronts. She'll have a victory on uranium sales to India because she's indicated what she wants. She's cast around the views of her senior colleagues and she's got enough support across the board to guarantee that she'll get that up. I mean, there'll be unhappiness from the left, but they won't argue, they won't win the vote in the end. And I think, likewise, on gay marriage, her position will prevail, and by it's more convenient for her to have a conscience vote so that everybody's allowed to express their view, and it removes the risk that at the last minute they do get enough votes to overturn her. And if that was to happen, then at least it's done on the conscience and not seen as rolling the Prime Minister as directly.
So what's the reaction then to the Coalition on that question of a conscience vote? Do they then do likewise?
Well, that's interesting because at the moment Abbott is saying that they will hold the line, that there will not be a conscience vote, but there are quite a few moderate Liberals who think that there should be, that it is a matter of conscience, and they will be pressuring Abbott to change his position on that. Whether he does or not's another matter, but it's another problem for him that he's going to have to address in the short term.
And there's one of those Liberals who's on the record as saying so, the member for Wentworth.
But he's not alone. There are others as well, who think along the same lines, who haven't said it yet, but probably will.
Now, Karen, the Labor Party is taunting Tony Abbott on the Peter Slipper thing, suggesting that there might have been more rats in the ranks to call on.
Indeed, they can't help themselves, Barry. There's a story in the Sunday Telegraph talking about the fact that they had other Liberal rats, so-called, lined up to step up to take the speakership if by some miracle Peter Slipper didn't do it. Alex Somlier's name was obviously mentioned last year in the course of negotiations after the federal election. There are two more allegedly unnamed Liberals. I understand there are two more who had expressed an interest to the government themselves last year. It's described as having put their toes in the water. Now, this story, unsourced, says that the talks were not as advanced with these Liberals then or now as they were with Alex Somlier and Peter Slipper. But yes, it's just the messing with the minds idea, I think, of just warning Tony Abbott that there might be others ready to jump ship.
I think that's all it is.
Can I tell you what? If there were others, they should have taken them.
Good point. Dennis, the mystery of the video, it seems to be coming up the whole time that some sort of video exists involving Peter Slipper. Yes,
well, I've been hearing about this video, I think, for 5 or 6 years now. And I've never actually spoken to anyone who's seen it, but I've spoken to people who say that I've spoken to people who have seen it. It sort of fits in that thread through Australian political history with the Love Boat on Sydney Harbour and then the Mark Latham Bucks Night video. These things are much talked about but rarely seen. If it does exist, and there are some people who swear that it does exist, they say it's not a terrible, it doesn't show anything really shocking, but it shows what people refer to as a weakness on the part of Peter Slipper. I have no idea what that means. If it does exist, I think it will come out now.
OK, well, that's the Sunday Papers, and we'll go straight to our program guest now, and a key independent in the federal parliament, Andrew Wilkie, and he joins us from Hobart.